Talk, music, get it all.
24 hours.
On West Africa Democracy Radio. 94.9 FM Dakar.
WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar and Monrovia, 1 p.m. in Niamey. Good afternoon. Welcome to Newslink, live on West Africa Democracy Radio, 94.9 FM and around the world at wadr.org. First, our top stories. The Gambia's major opposition United Democratic Party questions supplementary voter registration figures ahead of December elections.
How on earth can anyone take objection to any person who is ineligible to have his name entered on the voters list?
UN warns against illegal migration amid latest death or disappearance of over 100 migrants off Mauritanian coast.
Among the survivors on that ship were 2 children who had lost all their family members during the journey and are now recovering in hospital with other survivors.
Liberia records another cocaine bust valued at over $300 million, raising fresh concerns over regional drug trafficking networks. African Union's Extraordinary Health Summit gets underway in Accra with calls for greater African investment in health care. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
On the news, this is Augustine Bill Coley.
Thank you for staying with us. We begin in the Gambia, where the main opposition party, United Democratic Party UDP, is raising concerns over what it describes as unresolved discrepancies in the figures from the 2026 supplementary voter registration exercise. The Independent Electoral Commission announced that 212,095 people registered during the exercise, but the UDP says that the data initially shared with political parties showed 179,445 registrants. The party says after raising concerns, the Commission acknowledged that the figures for people who registered on April 8 were mistakenly omitted from its initial communication. The Commission later updated the figures by adding 3,713 voters registered to the list on that day. However, the party questions the remaining difference and is calling on the Commission to provide a full breakdown of the registration data. Rose Samarakates has the details.
The UDP has written to the IEC requesting the total number of registrations before deletions and the number of duplicated entrances removed, the final register of verification and the complete data set used in the process. The party is also calling for an extension of the scrutiny period, urging that political parties and citizens need sufficient time to examine the register and raise objections where necessary. Party leader Usainu Dabo explains.
We did not have any problem for the omissions because anyone who feels that your name was omitted could go to the IEC within 14 days and get your name inserted in the register. But we do have problem with the objections because if the complete list of voters is not published, how on earth can anyone take objection to any person who is ineligible to have his name entered on the voters list?
The Independent Electoral Commission is yet to respond publicly to the UDP's concerns. The party says its request is aimed at promoting transparency and strengthening confidence in the electoral process ahead of the December 2026 presidential election. For WADR, Rose Samara Cates, Banjul.
In Cote d'Ivoire, renewed tensions over the legality of former President Laurent Gbagbo are reigniting debates about political reconciliation, justice, and the limits of political discourse in a country still shaped by the scars of its past crisis. The controversy follows remarks by government spokesperson Amadou Coulibaly, who described Gbagbo in criminal terms while criticizing a political initiative by his party, the PPACR. His comments are drawing strong condemnation from the opposition. Imo Edit has the details.
The African People's Party Côte d'Ivoire (PPACI) has condemned remarks made by Communication Minister and government spokesperson Amadou Coulibaly targeting former President Laurent Gbagbo. The minister criticized the PPACI's proposed Social Pact, a political program promoted by Gbagbo, describing it as vague and lacking substance. He also referred to the former president as a criminal. Reacting to the comments, PPACI First Executive Vice President John Garvers Chedi accused the minister of making statements that were disrespectful and incompatible with the responsibility of a government official. The party argued that democratic debate should focus on policies and ideas rather than personal attacks, while stressing the need to respect the status of former heads of state. The PPACI also pointed to Laurent Gbagbo's acquittal by the International Criminal Court, where he had faced charges linked to post-election violence following Côte d'Ivoire's 2010 crisis. The party said continued references to him as a criminal disregard that judicial outcome and risk reopening divisions from the country's past. The exchange comes as Côte d'Ivoire continues to balance political reconciliation efforts with ongoing debates over accountability, justice, and the role of former leaders in national politics.
Added with that report, the United Nations is again warning against illegal migration, particularly through perilous routes to Europe. The latest caution comes after at least 144 migrants died or went missing last week while attempting to cross the Atlantic Ocean to Europe. Their boat, which departed from the Gambia, ran out of fuel, leaving the migrants stranded at sea for nearly 25 days before being rescued. Only 38 survivors were found. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, says the incident highlights the continued dangers faced by migrants along one of the world's deadliest migration routes. Matthew Sotmarch is the spokesperson of the UNHCR.
The refugees and migrants were reported dead or missing after attempting the perilous sea journey from West Africa towards Europe. And that, of course, highlights the continued human costs of these dangerous routes. Overall, 3 rescue and disembarkation operations were conducted between the 14th and the 18th of July in Nouadhibou, Mauritania. The survivors came from various different countries in sub-Saharan Africa. Passengers on one of the boats that was rescued on the 18th of July had experienced particular tragedy, with 143 people reported dead or missing and just 38 surviving after nearly 25 days stranded on the Atlantic, having left the Gambia to try to reach Spain. Among the survivors on that ship were 2 children who had lost all their family members during the journey and are now recovering in hospital with other survivors. Overall, this is a stark reminder that despite sustained efforts by coastal authorities and partners to save lives, the Atlantic route from West Africa to the Canary Islands remains one of the world's deadliest mixed movement corridors due to long distances, unpredictable ocean conditions, unseaworthy and overcrowded boats, and limited access to timely rescue.
Matthew Sotmarch is the spokesperson of the UNHCR.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Now let's take you to Liberia, where authorities have seized what could be the country's largest ever haul of cocaine during a raid on a warehouse in Lower Margibi County. On Tuesday, joint security forces confiscated 3,971 kilograms of cocaine worth an estimated $318 million from a warehouse in the VOA community in Painesville and arrested 2 foreign suspects who had a firearm. The operation comes just 6 weeks after another 90 million cocaine seizure at the country's international airport, raising fresh concerns over Liberia's growing role as a transit point for international drug trafficking. Minister Joalumik Pia is Liberia's information minister. He provides an update on the seizure.
A history of drugs in Liberia has an indication that those involved in drug business perhaps see our country as a place that they can use in getting over to their final destination they want to get. Our government has been keen on dealing with that. We've had a 19 million drug situation that everybody's talking about, something that is far below the 100 million that came here, passed through here, and nobody was held accountable. There's been an attempt to politicize it. But whatever took place with that 19 million was just an indication that the individuals and security system that we have dealing with the drug situation were determined, committed, and will leave no stone unturned in tackling the drugs issue. So while that case is still on, Liberian security forces have just discovered what could amount to being the biggest drugs bust in our country. That tells you is that the LDEA, the national security, and everyone involved in these businesses are working 24 hours around the clock to make sure that those who may use our country as a drug hub will not succeed.
Liberia's Information Minister, Jerolimic Pia, there speaking. Niger's Ministry of Commerce and Industry is taking measures to prevent artificial shortages of essential commodities in the country. Authorities are warning against the bulk purchase and illegal storage of fuel and cement for resale at higher prices. The warning comes as some parts of the country experience rising prices and shortages of the two products. The move has been welcomed by consumer rights groups who say it could help protect consumers and maintain market stability. Deborah Amour has the details.
The Ministry of Commerce says individuals are not allowed to store fuel or cement without authorization for the purpose of reselling them. The ministry warned that those found violating the regulation will face sanctions under a law adopted in 2019. Authorities say the measure is aimed at preventing artificial shortages and further price increases caused by illegal stockpiling. They warn that some individuals could hoard the products and later sell them at prices twice as high on the market. The warning has been welcomed by consumer rights advocate Mahama Nouri, who says the measure will help protect consumers and ensure fair access to essential goods.
The aim is not only to inform all economic actors about the existence of these regulations, but also to raise awareness about the consequences of anti-competitive practices when they are identified. This serves as a warning, in my view. It is necessary. Everyone must understand that we are not operating in a lawless environment where people can do whatever they want, whenever they want, and however they want.
Although state-owned companies responsible for producing fuel and cement continue production, grey cement used in construction and petroleum products, particularly diesel, remain unavailable in some areas.
A report by our Niamey correspondent Yakuba Abibulai and presented by Deborah Amour. Increasing attention is being placed on the security situation in West Africa and the Sahel as the region faces renewed terrorist attacks, political instability, and changing regional alliances. In recent weeks, the African Union has condemned deadly attacks in Mali and Niger, while the United Nations launched an independent strategic review of the mandate of the United Nations Office for West Africa and the Sahel, UNOWAS. As regional and international actors reassess their approach to peace and security in West Africa, questions remain over what more can be done to address the growing threats. To discuss these developments and their implications for the region, WDRO spoke with security and geopolitical analyst Adib Sani.
So what in essence this means is that our strategy has not been the best. That is why it is critical that these organizations really look at those strategies that we've deployed over the years and possibly come out with new strategies that would help, counter the threats. And the unfortunate thing also is the fact that most of the terrorist activities are based in these countries. And if we leave them to fight it alone, I don't think they are going to win. We are all going to be consumed, considering how closely knit we are as a sub-region and the probability of something happening in one country and spilling over into another. So it is a matter of grave concern.
That's Adib Sani, a security and geopolitical expert, speaking there. Stay with us as we bring you details of that conversation during the guest interview. Now to environmental issues. In Nigeria, 17 states have been placed on medium flood alert as the rainy season intensifies, with authorities warning that rising water levels could threaten communities, infrastructures, and livelihoods. The warning comes as Nigeria continues to face recurring flooding, which is in recent years displacing thousands of people and causing significant damage to homes, agriculture, and public facilities. Our correspondent Yechenusa Setu reports.
Nigeria's Hydrological Services Agency, NISA, has issued a 7-day flood advisory warning communities in 17 states to prepare for possible localized flooding between July 21 and 27. The agency says rising water levels have been recorded at several monitoring stations across the country, with 16 gauging stations exceeding established watch and warning thresholds. NISA Director General Umar Ibrahim Mohammed says communities located along major river channels and floodplains are at increased risk and has urged residents, local authorities, and state governments to take immediate precautionary measures. The affected states include Bauchi, Edo, Imo, Kaduna, Plateau, and Benue, among others. The agency says the potential impact extends beyond communities, with critical infrastructure also at risk. NISA has called on emergency agencies and local authorities to prepare evacuation plans, relocate residents and livestock from high-risk areas, and ensure relief supplies such as food, clean water, and medical materials are available. For WADR, Yechenusa Setu in Abuja.
You are listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM and around the world at wadr.org. Here is a reminder of our top stories. The Gambia's major opposition United Democratic Party questions supplementary voter registration figures ahead of December elections. UN warns against illegal migration amid the latest death or disappearance of over 100 migrants off Mauritanian coast. Liberia records another cocaine bust valued at over $300 million, raising fresh concerns over regional drug trafficking networks. Still ahead in the news, African Union's Extraordinary Health Summit gets underway in Accra with calls for greater African investment in health care. We also have guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
Connecting Ghana to West Africa. This is Nadidi Tete in Accra, and you're listening to WADR 94.9 FM, Dakar.
Thank you for staying with us. We are streaming live on YouTube at WADR News and on Facebook, WADR English Service. African leaders have been urged to reduce the continent's dependence on foreign aid and invest more in domestic healthcare systems. The call comes as government ministers meet in Ghana for the African Union's Extraordinary Health Summit. African governments are seeking to accelerate universal health coverage, reduce preventable maternal deaths, and strengthen health systems across the continent by 2030. Our Accra correspondent, Nadidi Tete, reports.
Speaking at the African Union's Extraordinary Health Summit in Accra, Ghana's Health Minister Kwabena Mintah Kando said African countries must take greater responsibility for financing their own healthcare systems. He warned that the continent continues to bear a disproportionate share of the global burden of maternal mortality, accounting for nearly 70% of maternal deaths worldwide, despite many of these deaths being preventable.
When healthcare pushes families deeper into poverty, we cannot honestly claim we have achieved universal health coverage. We have simply shifted the burden from illness to death. A continent that finances its own health secures its own future. It cannot be held hostage to changing priorities beyond its shores. We must strengthen Africa's health sovereignty. Our continent continues to consume medicines, vaccines, and health technologies that are overwhelmingly produced elsewhere. The lessons of recent global crisis remain fresh in our mind. The next emergency must never again find Africa waiting at the back of the queue.
According to him, stronger investment in primary health care, including community health workers, clinics, and frontline medical facilities, is essential to achieving health sovereignty and universal health coverage. The summit has brought together health, finance, and foreign affairs ministers ahead of a meeting of African heads of states and government. Discussions are focusing on ending AIDS AIDS and tuberculosis by 2030, reducing preventable maternal and child deaths, expanding universal health coverage, and increasing domestic financing for healthcare. Leaders are also expected to adopt the Accra Declaration, a roadmap aimed at building stronger and more self-reliant health systems across Africa. For WADR, Nadidi Tete, Accra.
Still talking health, we head to Togo, where malaria remains the leading cause of medical consultations, with health authorities reporting a rise in cases during the month of June. The increase has been linked to heavy rainfall, which has caused favorable conditions for mosquito breeding, prompting the government to intensify prevention efforts through the free distribution of insecticide-treated mosquito nets. Usma Uma tells us more.
Togo is recording a resurgence of malaria cases, with the Plateau region among the most affected areas, according to the latest climate and health bulletin from the National Meteorological Agency. The districts of Bele and Agu in the Plateau region recorded nearly 40 malaria cases per 1,000 inhabitants during June. Health authorities say the increase is linked to heavy rains recorded across several parts of the country during the start of the rainy season. Many localities received more than 100 millimeters of rainfall, while the capital, Lomé, recorded up to 422 millimeters, the highest level recorded during the period. As part of efforts to curb the spread of the disease, Togo has launched a nationwide campaign to distribute free insecticide-treated mosquito nets and insecticides. Following distributions in the Savannes, Central, Plateaux and Maritime regions, communities in the Kara region and Greater Lomé are expected to receive their mosquito nets from July 26. The campaign also includes awareness activities encouraging households to properly use the nets as a protection against mosquito bites, the main cause of malaria transmission. More than 5 million mosquito nets are expected to be distributed by the government with support from partners, including the World Health Organization.
Usma Uma with the details of that report.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is a guest.
Well, our guest this afternoon is Ade Sani, a security and geopolitical analyst. He speaks about the increase in security situation in West Africa and the Central Sahel. In this interview, Sani analyzes the renewed terrorist attacks, political instability, and the changing regional alliances. Take a listen.
The region is dealing with a plethora of issues. They are socio-economic and geopolitical in nature. But the elephant in the room is got to do with the expansion of terrorism across the Sahel and towards coastal West Africa. Countries such as Togo, Benin, and even Ghana consistently being under threat. And the fear of further expansion towards the coastal areas. That is why it is important that we look at their strategy, because for years on end, the same strategy hasn't really provided the results we wanted, because according to the Global Terrorism Index, the region is responsible for 50% of all terrorist attacks globally. So what in essence this means is that our strategy has not been the best. That is why it is critical that these organizations really look at those strategies that we've deployed over the years and possibly come out with new strategies that would help, counter the threats.
Let's focus on the AES. These countries have taken a different part in their relations with regional and international organizations. How does this changing regional landscape affect security operations?
I've always indicated that our ability to fight terrorism effectively lies solely on how united we are. Through partnership, we'll be able to share better intelligence. We'll be able to collaborate with each other in a much more effective way. But if we are fractured, it becomes a very dicey situation. So I must say, the formation of the AES has left a huge vacuum in our effort towards, fighting terrorism. And the unfortunate thing also is the fact that most of the terrorist activities are based in these countries. And if we leave them to fight it alone, I don't think they are going to win. We are all going to be consumed, considering how closely knit we are as a sub-region and the probability of something happening in one country and spilling over into another. So it is a matter of grave concern.
We have seen a lot of condemnations, especially regarding the security challenges from the AU and other regional bodies. What should be done beyond the usual condemnations that we see when these things happen?
Well, we have to go beyond the condemnation we want to see real action on the ground. And the action is not all about militarization. We need to address those deep-seated socioeconomic and geopolitical deficits that makes terrorism thrive. Issues of internal insecurities. If you are dealing with bandits, if you are dealing with internal conflict, it creates an enabling environment for terrorists to move in. And there are a lot of examples to that effect.
All right, finally, are you hopeful that these assessments could change anything in the threats that West Africa and the Sahel is currently facing? Because we do know that the UNOWA's assessment is commissioned by the UN Security Council.
Some lessons can be learned from the past and be applied going into the future. So from the civil society point of view, I think the changes that should apply first is the need for local ownership of some of these threats. If we deal with it more from the outside rather than from the inside, it becomes difficult to deal with because they understand their environment. All they need is the support. Security, like I indicated, cannot rely solely on military responses. Then the issues of governance, justice, and economic development are integral to security. Then most importantly, early warning systems must lead to timely preventive action. And last but not the least, youth employment and community grievances must be addressed alongside security operations. That is the way to go.
That was Ade Sani, a security and geopolitical analyst. And in sports, the Confederation of African Football (CAF) has officially accepted the joint declaration of interest by Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger to host the 2032 Africa Cup of Nations (AFCON). The decision clears the way for the three Alliance of Sahel states members to proceed with the official bidding process. CAF confirmed that the joint bid meets the requirements for submitting a declaration of interest under its hosting regulations. The announcement followed a meeting in New York on July 18 between CAF President Patrice Motsepe and the presidents of the Football Federation of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. The Nigerian Football Federation says it will continue working closely with its counterparts in Burkina Faso and Mali to develop a joint hosting proposal that meets international standards. And in tennis, Uganda's Joseph Sibatindira and Egypt's Zina Aman Mohammed were crowned champions of the RTTF Hopes Weekend Challenge Africa 2026, which concluded on July 19 in Accra, Ghana. The six-day event brought together 35 of Africa's top under-12 table tennis players from 15 countries, alongside 21 coaches, as part of the International Table Tennis Federation's Talent Development Program. Nigeria's Ayola Umar Olawale finished runner-up in the boys' competition, while Elizabeth Eminake placed fourth in the girls' event. Following the African edition, the RTTF Hopes Weekend Challenge will continue in New Zealand, Kazakhstan, before concluding with the World Finals in Sheffield, England. And that's the latest in the world of sports. With that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening. Many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Maudu Ju for the technical support. Continuing to interact with us via our social media platforms, including X, Instagram, and Facebook at WADR English. I am Augustine Curley. Good afternoon.
We thank you for listening to Newslink in Nigeria on Love FM Abuja and Darling FM Owerri. In the Gambia on Hot FM Banjul, Hilltop FM and Veritas Radio in Serekunda. Thank you for listening on Alternative Youth Radio Lofa County, Liberia, Radio Kegaman in Nimba County, and DCN Radio Riverses County. A big thank you to Radio Graft FM in Sierra Leone for listening, and in Ghana we thank Radio Pad in Damango and Royals FM in Wenchi. Thank you all for listening.